Welcome to footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook, bring you a 2011 FCS conference preview on the Pioneer Football League. Let's take a look at this league top to bottom, team by team. So let's hit the recruiting trail to see how well these teams recruited this past offseason. Best recruiting class, I'm going with Davidson. The Wildcats had an outstanding class, top to bottom, very talented players they brought in. The guy that stands out to me the most is defensive lineman Weston Hawkins at 6'1", 265, a terror off the end. This guy's going to be a phenomenal pass rusher for the Wildcats. And you look at him putting on bulk, so he's going to get up to about 285 by the time he's done and should have a lot of records to back up his lofty prep ranking. Some other key recruits in the Pioneer Football League. You look at the Campbell Fighting Camels getting quarterback Luke Sirgo. You see that pass right there, pinpoint accuracy. This guy's going to be an outstanding player for the Camels. Butler was able to get an outstanding defensive lineman in Glenn Summers. This guy is 6'2", 210 pounds, maybe a little bit bigger, but he's going to be a force to be reckoned with on the defensive line. Mitch Sanders Jr. was a talented player in high school and should bring more versatility to that Dayton Flyers secondary. You look at Drake getting running back Jeremy Burgos. This guy is a load to bring down, very physical runner, and should help bolster that Bulldogs ground game. Jacksonville got themselves a quarterback of the future in Cade Bell, the coach's son, 6 feet 170, pinpoint accuracy, and is a true field general. Max Jocks is a very talented tailback, jitterbug guy that can make you miss in a phone booth and has speed to take it the distance. You look at Morehead State getting tailback Quentin Brooks. This guy is very explosive and should have an impact as a true freshman. Quarterback Dominic Trevino is a guy that I really like, 6'2", 215, and has the look of a future star, one of many quarterback stars that come out this conference. Some Pioneer League superlatives, starting with the best quarterbacks. I'm going with the Jacksonville Dolphins. You look at the best player, Josh McGregor, 32 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, but also getting true freshman Cade Bell, the coach's son. You can't go wrong, and they're really stacked for the future. Best group of running backs, I'm giving it to the Camels of Campbell. These guys have a talented backfield with Rashawn Brown, the talented tailback who had 5.7 yards to carry over 600 yards, and Carl Smith, a valuable backup, also contributed with 500 yards and 5 touchdowns. Best receiving core, I'm going with the Dolphins again. Two guys stand out, Josh Philpott and Larry Thompson. But even though they lost some guys, you look at the way they throw the football, they're going to be future stars that are going to emerge this season. So overall, they have a very talented group. Best offensive line, I'm going with Jacksonville again. You look at guys like Osking, Halverson, and also Cypher. Those guys are the reason why Josh McGregor has so much time in the pocket to connect on those deep passes downfield. Best defensive line, I'm going with Morehead State. I like what the Eagles bring on the defensive front. You look at talented defensive end Jerome Raymond and his 11.5 sacks, but also Mark Hall, 13.5 tackles for losses. It's going to be tough for teams to run against the Eagles this year, and it's also going to be tough to pass because they will get pressure on a quarterback. Best group of linebackers, I'm going with Butler. The Bulldogs have two talented LBs in Jordan Ridley and also Nick Caldecott, combined over 200 tackles. Both guys are active in the run game and are very effective in pass coverage. Best defensive backs, I'm going with Dayton. The Flyers have two talented cornerbacks in Matt Flegler. This guy had over 10 pass breakups, 4 interceptions, but also Kyle Sabetic, another talented corner, and safety Eric Roberts, a guy that should make some all-conference teams this season. Who has the best special teams unit? I'm going with Butler. They have a solid kicker in David Lang, and their coverage units are very effective, which is why I think they are always in ball games and should continue to have that success this season. Offensive MVP, I'm going with Josh McGregor out of Jacksonville. There should be no reason why he shouldn't have another banner season, make All-American, and it is my dark horse candidate for the Walter Payton Award. Defensive MVP is a three-way tie. You look at San Diego's defensive end Mario Kern, 17 sacks last season. This guy just a terror off the end. Also, speaking of terror off the end, Jerome Raymond and his double-digit sacks. This guy should have another banner year. Cornerback L. Rawin, Ademiye, 6 interceptions, 10 pass breakups, very solid player and is on the radar of NFL scouts. Freshman of the year, I'm going with tailback Quentin Brooks for Morehead State. I think he's going to see the field sometime this season, but I like what he brings to the table. Great burst, great vision, runs with power. Reminds me a lot of Frank Gore that plays for the San Francisco 49ers. Best pro prospect, I'm going with quarterback Josh McGregor out of Jacksonville. This guy is very accurate, reminds me a lot of Colt McCoy in the fact that he has that great anticipation, which allows him to throw receivers open. And he also has a better arm than McCoy, and I like his pedigree. 32 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, doesn't make mistakes with the football, and should be a solid pro player. team on the rise in the Pioneer Football League, I'm going with Marist. The Red Foxes have an outstanding talent base here in New York, but they also have great coaching. Jim Parody is going to have these guys headed in the right direction, and with a bunch of starters returning on offense, 8 starters to be exact, they should be well improved over last season. Toughest schedule in the PFL, I'm going with Valparaiso. You look at this schedule, look at the road games: Youngstown State, Duquesne, Butler, Drake, and Marist. But you look at that homecoming game October 1st against Morehead State, that's going to be tough. Then you have to play San Diego the following week. Tough slate for a team like Valparaiso. Prediction time in the PFL, starting with number 10, Valparaiso. Reasons for optimism: I love the talented receivers they have in Sean McCarty and Kevin Becker, and they have a very solid special teams unit. Cause for concern: defensively, they have to totally revamp what they did last season. 46 points a game given up is not going to get you any victories in this league. But what we'll learn is that quarterback Dominic Trevino, the true freshman, may see a lot of playing time and will help lead the Valparaiso Crusaders back on the road to respectability. Next up is Campbell. Reasons for optimism: you have to love the ground game. They're going to be able to run the football on every team this year with those 2 talented tailbacks, Rashawn Brown and Carl Smith. And the offensive line, it does a solid job and doesn't give up sacks. Causes for concern: I look at the quarterback play. Can they find someone to step up and be the lead guy? Can they find a way to get that passing game on track? But what we will learn is that with a solid foundation, a lot of depth, a lot of returning starters, Campbell will be a very improved team this season. At number 8, I have the Red Foxes. Reasons for optimism: I like their secondary, led by safety Nick Marinero. This guy's a very talented player back there in the back half of that defense, and their linebackers are also very solid. And I like the addition of Max Jocks, the tailback. The true freshman is going to come in and help bolster that ground game. Causes for concern: they have some questions at quarterback due to injury, not due to talent. But if they can return healthy, Tommy Riley can return healthy, there's a lot to be excited for the Marist Red Foxes. And also, they have to improve their run defense and pass defense, so the defensive line has to get overhauled. 2 sacks last season is not acceptable. But what we'll learn is that look for Marist, with the talent they have on the roster, to make some noise and pull off an upset or 2 this season. Next up is Davidson. Reasons for optimism: that defensive line has some very solid pass rushers and they can get to the quarterback. Offensively, quarterback Jonathan Carcroft won Freshman of the Year last season and should improve this year, as well as he has a talented receiver in Lanny Funston. Causes for concern: at offensive line, they gave up 36 sacks, and the run game. Who's going to be the tailback? Who's going to be the bell cow? But what we'll learn is that with the schedule and that passing game, it could lead to a winning season for the Davidson Wildcats. At number 6, I have the Dayton Flyers. Reasons for optimism: I really love their secondary. These guys are talented ball hawks back there, and all are very aggressive in run support. Defensive lineman Devon Langhurst should have made my ever-growing list of defensive MVPs. 14 sacks, very talented player. Causes for concern: the losses on the offensive line are huge. Quarterback Valentino is gone, and the linebackers have some questions. But what we will learn is that despite all the offensive losses, you got to look at the Dayton Flyers defense as a beacon of light and a reason why they're still going to be a factor in this year's PFL. Next up is the Butler Bulldogs. Reasons for optimism: as long as quarterback Andrew Huck is back there, they have a shot to be successful with wide receivers Zach Watkins and Jordan Koopman. And you have to like the linebackers Ridley and Caldecott. These guys are very talented players. Causes for concern: the ground game. Who's going to be the tailback? Who's going to help take the pressure off of Huck? The secondary needs improvement, and they have to find some way to get to the quarterback. But what we'll learn is that as long as Huck is back there, the offense is going to be successful, and they will have a shot to contend for a title. Next up is San Diego. Reasons for optimism: I love the efficiency of quarterback Mason Mills, and that defensive line is phenomenal. 37 sacks last year, so they can get to the quarterback, and they're going to do the same this season. Cause for concern: I look at the lack of playmakers at the receiver spot and at the running back spot. They have a lot of guys, but not a lot of playmakers. But what we'll learn is that with the softer non-conference slate and a lot of talent returning, 16 starters in overall, the San Diego Toreros have a shot to win the conference title. At number 3, I have the Drake Bulldogs. Reasons for optimism: the linebackers are the strength of this team, led by Tyler Morehead and his 73 tackles. Offensively, the passing game will take off behind quarterback Mike Piatowski and those talented receivers they have out there on the flanks. Causes for concern: the running game. They only averaged 2.6 yards a carry last season. That has to improve dramatically, and the secondary gave up 16 yards a catch. But what we'll learn is that with the schedule, they get both Dayton and Jacksonville at home. That's going to help out. And 51 Letterman returning. There's a dark horse candidate right here in the Drake Bulldogs for the conference crown. At number 2, I have Morehead State. Reasons for optimism. Team defense is phenomenal. You know that defensive line led by Mark Hall and Jerome Raymond are going to continue to cause problems for opposing offenses. And they also offensively have some outstanding wide receivers. That passing game looks promising. Causes for concern. They have to get more production out of the ground game. The running backs have to step up and take some pressure off the QB. And speaking of that QB, Zach Lewis has to cut down on his interceptions, and the offensive line has to control the leakage. But what we will learn is that October 15th, road game at Jacksonville could be the de facto conference title game. At number 1, I have the Jacksonville Dolphins. Reasons for optimism. You have to love the offensive firepower in the passing game, and also keep an eye on running back J.J. Lasser, who last year had 800 yards rushing and 8.5 yards a carry. Plus, they also have a very solid offensive line. Causes for concern, the linebackers. I have some questions about the depth of that position, and will all-conference free safety Jordan Dewhurst be able to return to the team from suspension? But what we will learn is that if the Dolphins can get through September alive, the rest of the schedule sets up nice for the Dolphins to hold the conference title at the end of the season. For more FCS conference previews, visit footballgameplan.com/FCS or visit our YouTube channel at youtube.com/footballgameplan. And listen to the Football Game Plan radio show, which airs Saturdays, 11 a.m. Eastern Time at blogtalkradio.com/footballgameplan.